Hello everyone. Being a computer programmer, you need to have a basic understanding of some of the important terms in order to know how your system and code actually runs. So the terms I'm talking about are these 6 terms. Even if you have a basic understanding of these terms, I would highly recommend you to watch the entire video in order to know its functionality in a very easy and simple way. So without getting late, I will start with the user mode. Without reading blindly the definition, let us understand this with an example. Being a programmer, we are all familiar with the VS Code, and even if you are not, don't worry. In some application that we are working, if we wanted to open a file, then in VS Code, what we do is we go to the top left corner and click on the file icon, and now we click on open file, select the required file, and it will get imported to the VS Code. But do you know what is the process behind it? Let us understand. So I, the user, is using an application called VS Code. So VS Code is said to be a user-based application, and it is said that VS Code is running in the user mode. So when I wanted a file, this VS Code, the user-based application sends a request to open the file to the operating system which is running in the kernel mode. So what's the kernel mode? What is the kernel? A kernel is the core software of the operating system which is mainly responsible for hardware access. So the operating system, upon receiving the request from the VS Code, fetches entire data from the hardware, that is the hard disk. Once it fetches the entire data, it loads into the RAM, and from this the VS Code can access the file data. So after listening this, you may have two potential doubts that why the user, that is the VS Code user based application, cannot access data or cannot fetch data directly from the hard disk. This is because user processes do not have direct access to the hardware since they are highly protected and secured. That is the reason we use operating system. And the second possible doubt is why the middleware RAM has occurred. This is because accessing data from the hard disk is very slow when compared to that of RAM, and also you can edit the file contents very quickly when using the RAM. And this is about the user mode and kernel mode. Now let's talk about the system call. So I have said that the user based application VS Code is making a request to the operating system. So this request is called a system call. So that is the call made by the user based application or the user process to the system. What system? Operating system. So this is the working of a system call. So user process is being executing, that is in our example I am working with the VS Code, I am running a program and etc. Suddenly I wanted to access a file. So the VS Code sends a system call to the kernel mode, that is the operating system, and once the operating system executes the system call, that is fetches the entire data from the hard disk and loads it into the RAM, the VS Code will access this data and the user process continues. With this, you will have a clear understanding of user mode, kernel mode and system call. If you still have any doubts, I would love to help you in the comment section. And next three terms are the compiler, interpreter and JVM. So what's a compiler? Your computer CPU can only understand the machine code, that is a code written in the form of binary digits, zeros and ones. But unfortunately, we as humans cannot understand this binary code, and that's why we write code in high level programming languages like C, Java, etc. In order to cover this barrier, there comes the magic man compiler. That is, a compiler is used to translate the human readable code, that is, the code written in high level languages, to the machine understandable code. Let me explain how compiler does this. For example, the below example shows the C program for printing the hello world. So when I write this program, I'll save this program in .c file. So the compiler converts this entire C program from .c to .exe. That is, it converts the source file to the .exe, which is the machine code, and then the CPU executes the machine code and it displays the output hello world. So the compiler work is to convert the human readable code to the machine understandable code. And now we will understand about the interpreter. If you seen my slides very clearly, you would see here in this third point that a compiler or interpreter is used to translate human readable code into the machine code. Then what's the difference between them is an interpreter, unlike compiler, translates the and executes the code line by line instead of entire code at once. That's why it do not need a separate file called exe. And one of the highly used languages that uses interpreter is Python. So let us understand the differences between compiler and interpreter and which one is better for which purpose. Being a competitive programmer, I would use compiler than interpreter because compiler converts entire source program to the machine code at once, so the execution speed will be fast and the time complexity is less, and it is better to use compiler for larger inputs, and the memory usage for the compiler is lower than the interpreter. And you can also go through the points like error checking and readability and simplicity. And you have any doubts, I would help you in the comment section. And next comes JVM. What is JVM? JVM is Java Virtual Machine. JVM is a special software using which we can run our Java programs on different computers which uses different operating systems without any modification. Let me explain you this with an example. You see, I am writing a Java program in a computer which uses the operating system of Windows. My friend uses a different operating system in her computer, for example Linux. So, is it possible for me to send the Java code that I am working on to my friend? Yes, with that too without any kind of modification. This is possible because of JVM, because as we all know, compiler converts the source code to the byte code, and then comes the JVM. JVM converts this compiled Java code into the machine code specific to your particular operating system. And this is the reason we say Java is platform independent. That is, a program written in one operating system, that is on Windows, can run on Mac or Linux. So by this you have a clear understanding of all the six terms. Thank you so much for watching the video.